Welcome to Sandbox FOMO5 from Buro Happold. Each week we pick short snippets from our most recent episode for your listening pleasure. These quick listens could be valuable insights, thought-provoking elements, or even practical advice that will no doubt enrich your life and knowledge. Sandbox brings together curious individuals interested in a specific topic to discuss, dissect, and interrogate it. The style is conversational, with experts from Buro Happold and invited external guests who will add another angle to the narrative. Listeners are encouraged to gather around our podcast so that we can explore the latest advances in various fields and expand our collective horizons. Sometimes we'll tackle a subject head-on, sometimes a sideways view, but always with curiosity, expertise, and who knows, maybe even a dash of humour. We had a chat before we started recording this podcast, and you were all talking about the need to change attitudes, the need to value the buildings we have, to value the materials we had. And I just wonder, because there's this phrase that keeps cropping up, that of circular economy. And I just thought, Anna, could you tell us a little bit more about what is a circular economy, please?
In my view, really is trying to use as much of the existing materials that we already as a society invested so much in terms of energy production and trying to reuse them, whether it's in the same building and the same site or finding a home in another site, but making sure that we stop the madness of just sending materials to the skip and buying new. We need to stop this madness.
It is about an attitude, and it's about trying to combat the attitude that's maybe been born out of an overabundance, and it's easy to be tempted to sort of take things and use them and throw them away. And actually there's a much more promising future for a lot of the materials we have, and it's the same for existing buildings as it is for furniture. You know, a lot of retrofit is this idea of, you're sort of leading to there. It's like a piece of IKEA furniture that you upcycle at the end of its life, and it's, the concepts people are pretty familiar with in the sort of broad, darning your socks and giving your IKEA bookcase a new coat of paint, or maybe integrating it into a bigger sort of bookcase or something.
I was just going to add that the next step for us as an industry is to create a real economy around materials, is putting the right value to what's there, because at the moment we're not valuing it enough, and creating a supply chain, an economy that actually supports us all.
There is also the notion that there is much bad stuff happening, which purports to be retrofit. It might not use that word, but there are already lots of stories of housing areas where there's terrible damp, and some of them have been sort of temporarily plasterboarded over or whatever, and retrofit doesn't have to bring quality with it.
Gillian, do you think there'll be more tighter legislation coming in the future as retrofit really gains even more of a momentum with the pressing climate emergency?
I mean, conservation legislation exists, and there can be those sort of stories, but with more worthwhile buildings. And I like the fact that Darren was talking about the little modest buildings, because that's in many ways where my affections lie. And I mean, you don't have to demolish such a building, but you can sure mess it up. And that sort of feeling of needing to police it at a time when the staffing levels at planning offices and the demoralization of conservation officers and the like, that's playing in the other direction. So we need to remember all those things.
We're talking about conservation legislation. We're talking about safety. We're talking about carbon, building standards. So many different areas that feed in here. And I guess maybe what might be useful would be something that brings those together kind of holistically, where any retrofit reuse project is inevitably going to have to balance and consider all those different points. And some of those are easy to get credit for and easy to get guidance on. Building standards and carbon and safety should be relatively clear.
I was just going to, again, build on what Gillian and Darren mentioned, because we need to get to the conclusion that as a society, we have this amazing built stock that is out there. It was probably built in a time when we had different needs as a society. So it's not just about making them more efficient. It's also, how do we adapt for current needs? What do we need as a society right now in the use of those spaces? What's the impact of any changes we make to those buildings on the surrounding community. And some buildings will have more of an impact than others. And that's very difficult to quantify. But what we need is a little bit of more scrutiny and evaluation on different points through a process we already have that is called the planning process, that helps see if a construction or an alteration can go through. And probably that's the next step of evolution in all of this.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that quick dip into our last episode of Sandbox. Don't forget to subscribe to follow the show. You'll find Sandbox in all the usual places, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Buro Happold's YouTube channel, and on the Buro Happold website. What's more, if you want to join the conversation on X, known as Twitter to his old friends, use the hashtag BHSandbox. We'd love to hear from you on any of the topics discussed.